Now let's talk about assignment 2, knowledge assessment instrument. A lot of times people ask me, what is a knowledge assessment instrument? It's just 3 words that really mean an exam or a quiz. It is an instrument that we use to assess cognitive skills or cognitive or knowledge. So here it is. We've got 3 parts to this assignment. Part 1 is the creation of the instrument itself. Again, it's to capture the cognitive learning in your course or workshop. Part 2 is the rationale, and it's explaining your decisions for your design and why you chose the items you did, and it's talking about the implementation analysis. And it's actually covering off the guiding questions that are down below. And part 3 is self-assessment. And as you recall from listening to me talk about assignment 1, you were asked for one of your reflective practice to look at self-assessment. So this reading chapters 12 and 13, or 13 and 14, excuse me, of valuation, or the art of valuation, will certainly help you with self-assessment. So there's 3 parts to your self-assessment. What did you learn about creating this instrument? What are the strengths and weaknesses of this instrument? And that might be a challenge to answer, but it makes you actually reflect on the instrument itself. There may be some challenges with the instrument. Is it actually capturing all of what you want to capture? Maybe you're working in the cognitive domain, maybe you're working in the affective domain, and you want some other instrument to use. But this is something you need to consider when you're answering this question, when you're reflecting on it. You want to look at the rubric, or refer to the rubric, and think, how did I benchmark myself, marking your exam and what level it's at? And again, this is your self-assessment. You've got an objective rubric to look at. How do you benchmark yourself? Where do you find yourself? Are you level 1, 2, 3, or 4? And then your self-assessment, which is out of 5%. What do you give yourself out of 5%? So again, you're not just writing this self-assessment, explain to me why you feel this way. You're also going to say, hey, I'm either a 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, or whatever mark you feel you deserve. This is your self-assessment mark. Again, there's technical specifications that need to be made. Not made. Again, a cover sheet. Now, the knowledge instrument itself is what we call, it's got to have a minimum of 25 items, a minimum, right? And when we say items, that's just another way of terminology we use for a question, because not all questions have a question mark. So when you think about the 25 items, and you've decided to use a matching type item that has 10 responses and premises on it, that's not 10 items. So just be aware of that. We're looking for 25 items and 4 different types. And when we talk about types of items, we'll be talking about everything from multiple choice, fill in the blanks, short answer, essay type questions, matching, all that, those types of things. And we've got documentation here in Moodle to give you all that information. We also ask you to consider instrument best practices and item creation best practices applied. There is some documentation in the section dealing with assignment 2 that has that information. Again, your rationale needs to be at least 500 words, and if you are citing, make sure it's an APA format. Your assignment 2 is due at the end of week 4. I encourage you to get started as soon as you can, because there's quite a lot of technical things that need to go into designing your assessment or your knowledge instrument. So here's your guiding questions for your rationale report. What is the purpose of the exam? And what claims of validity and reliability can you make? So again, when we talked about validity and reliability in terminology, think about it. How is it valid? Is it content valid? Is it process valid? What claims can you make around that? And how would you know this would be reliable? Sometimes it's difficult if you haven't actually used the exam, but you want to make sure that you can answer this question as clearly as possible. Number 2 is to look about step 1, identify content being assessed. What content are you going to assess? What are you trying to capture with this instrument? Number 3 is create a table of specifications. So your table of specification actually goes with your rationale report. This comes up for me quite often in the face-to-face. We talk about the table specifications or a blueprint. Where does it go? Well, it's included here in the rationale. So again, you want to answer these questions. How did the table specs impact the creation of the exam? And here's a big hint. This is how we ensure alignment, is through the table specifications. It's also how you make your claims of validity. How much time is allocated for the exam and why? There is some information here in Moodle about the time it takes to complete each type of item, so you can calculate. And so you want to be able to calculate how long it's going to take to do that exam. And I always put a little bit of wiggle room in there. And how do you determine the value of the exam? This would actually be determined through your whole evaluation report or evaluation plan itself, but something to consider. Question number 4 is write valid and reliable items. Why did you pick the various item types? So again, you just want to be able to answer that. Step 5, the best practices. What best practices did you apply? Hopefully you're applying all of them, but you're going to have to read that document to speak to that in your rationale. Number 6 is creating a scoring guide. What factors you considered when you created a scoring guide? The scoring guide is how you score each one of the items themselves. And step 6, how are you going to prepare the learner and provide feedback after the exam to the learner? This is one of the key steps in assessment evaluation process, is keeping the learner involved. And if you remember week 1 reading, if you've done that, that they talk about an authentic assessment. That's ongoing communication of how the learner is doing. And lastly, we're going to look at the rubric. And as you can see, there's 2 components to the rubric. There's a knowledge assessment instrument, how you're going to get assessed on it, and there's how I'm going to assess it, and the rationale report. And again, the 3 different levels. Again, if you have any questions, please contact me so I can get back to you and answer your questions. I don't want you sitting in the dark going, geez, I wish I'd asked this question, or I should know this about this exam. Anyways,